I got a special treat for you all today. Today's guest is not your average mystic, and he would be the first to tell you that. William FitzRoy is the founder of Art of the Seer Academy, where he teaches people how to develop their psychic abilities without floating off into the astral or losing their grip on real life. William is part mystic, part strategist, and fully human, with just enough irreverent humor to keep things interesting. William is the kind of teacher who can talk about clairvoyance, lead a live intuitive exercise, and then show you how to ground your energy and reply to Slack messages, sometimes in the same breath. With over 2 decades of experience blending spiritual insight with real-world wisdom and a background in high-stakes event production to prove it, he's here to remind us that psychic power doesn't have to be woo-woo or wrapped in robes. It can be ethical, grounded, creative, and even kind of fun. Enjoy this interview with William FitzRoy. All right, welcome, William. I'm so glad you were able to hop on for this conversation.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here. I love chatting about this stuff. It's always enlightens me as much as I feel like other people too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I'm just glad that we have the opportunity to talk about this. As we were mentioning before we started the recording here, the audience on this channel, they're probably exposed to these ideas of psychic presence, psychic awareness, psychic sensitivity, but probably through a little different lens than how we're going to bring it today. So I'm excited to kind of venture into fresh waters.
I was just gonna say, let's blow some minds. Let's do it.
Yes, I'm always down for that. Yeah, cool. Well, William, first, I would like to get a little bit of a backstory on you, a little bit of some context for who you are as a creative, as a leader, as a psychic, as a seer. Can you just give us a little bit of a intro about how did you get started on this path?
Yeah, happy to. I like to start this by saying, like, if you would have asked me 30 years ago or 20 years ago, would I ever be on a podcast talking about being psychic? And the answer would be no. This is not ever what I thought I would be doing with my life, or something that I would be so engaged with and interested in. But happy that this is where I've kind of landed, because I feel like it is a unique intersection of kind of all the things I've always been interested in a certain way. I think, like a lot of sensitive people, like, I felt an overwhelming kind of alienation as a child, like, and there's a lot of like physical and reality-based circumstances that led to that. I'm adopted. I was raised by this wonderful sort of blue-collar Midwestern family. I joke that I was like the alien baby that showed up. Like, they were like, "Oh, let's adopt a baby," and then they got me, and they were like, "What have we done? Like, why? How did we get this one?"
Little did they know.
Little did they know, because I, definitely stood out wherever I was as a child, for sure. And I think that had a lot to do with just my innate creativity and the imagination I brought to sort of all things. So, starting all the way back off in childhood, I was, I wouldn't have called it like spirit guides or spirit back then. I had a lot of imaginary friends, right? So when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I was like totally happy playing alone in my room with my buddies who were not in body. And that kind of kicked off the whole thing. From there, as I matured into different areas of my life, got heavily involved in the arts, like choir and theater and performing arts specifically. And I think a lot of sensitive people look for connection and community in spaces with other alienated people, and those tend to be people in the arts. And so kind of went into that and found a lot of solace there in those communities. And so part of me was like, oh, this is what it is to be a theater person, is to be sensitive to energy and to spirit in this way. And then the more I got to know other people involved in the arts, I was like, oh no, definitely not everybody is like this. And then as I got into, kind of into, adolescence and up into high school and then undergrad, came out as gay, and I was like, oh, this must be what gay people do. I'm gay because I'm so sensitive to energy in this way. And then the more I dated as a gay man, I was like, no, not everyone is sensitive in this way. Like, that is not the unifying thing here.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, it wasn't until I was in my early 20s, after college, I moved to the big city and, you know, kind of starting my life. And without a lot of those community structures and support structures that I had found, you know, up into that point in my journey of different groups of people that, you know, had shared a common interest, I would say, the wheels kind of started to fall off my car. And the level at which I was sensitive to energy and sensitive to other people's energy in particular, I think just became overwhelming to me, which I think is a pretty common story. I think the expression of that is very different for each sensitive, but everyone talks about how like you kind of find ways to cope, and then eventually those coping mechanisms kind of fail you, and then you're forced to kind of get real with what's really happening. From there, I had a roommate, and this is the last part, I had a roommate who was taking a meditation class at the time. And she was like, I think you would really like this. I think she might have been trying to tell me I was crazy. I think she was like, would you please go take a class and like stop being crazy? But she was like, you know, she's like, I don't know that this is for me. She's like, but I think you're really going to like it. And I went to that class, and it was a 2-hour class, and about an hour in, we had a break. And I remember going up to the instructor and just being like, I have no idea what it means to be psychic. I have no idea what it means to meditate. I don't even understand what's happening here, but I have been waiting my whole life for, like, I just knew in that moment, like whatever it was that I was being sort of taught or initiated into in that experience was kind of what I had been waiting for. And no one had ever explained kind of my own life experience back to me in such simple but such meaningful ways. And that kind of is what got me kickstarted on this journey.
So that experience of that meditation class, that's what my friend Tim Shields would call the inciting incident. It's like that's the moment that the journey really begins. But I want to ask for a little more depth and insight here. So when I think of meditation and maybe having a first meditation experience, it's like all of a sudden all of the input that before I had the meditation experience, I felt was out of my control. The meditation having an experience of meditation, like silenced that, possibly for the first time. Was that what it was like for you? Like, you know, being a sensitive, you're like getting all this input all the time, can't turn it off. And then you have this moment where all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second, there's another layer of awareness here.
Yeah, I think that's a really brilliant way to put it. And to build on that, it was not only being able to silence, because certainly as a clairvoyant and a medium, like the noise can be outstanding. Also understanding maybe for the first time that my attention could be directed and could be conscious, right? So I think one of the ways that I experienced that sort of wheels falling off the cart was you just like get pulled in every direction. It's like, and we see this culturally when people talk about being psychic and mediums, when it's like the Long Island medium in the grocery store, like running up to somebody like, your dead grandma wants me to tell you that, you know, it's like, okay, but can you like rein that in? And like, do you have to respond to what you're aware of? Or do you have any ownership and authority and autonomy over your own experience of that? And I think that meditation class really opened up this doorway and this path to being like, oh, my attention and my experience of receiving like input can be owned.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. You have agency with
you don't just have to respond to everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, for whatever reason, for me, that was like really life-changing.
So my theory is that everybody has sensitivity. Everybody has access to this information. And my theory specifically, I mean, I think we can agree on that first part, right? But my theory specifically is that most people learn to turn it off as a method of coping because they don't necessarily know what it is or how to use it. So they just learn to disregard, you know, and train their reticular activating system to ignore it over time, so that eventually it's kind of filtered out. In your experience, having trained thousands of people in this modality, would you say that's accurate? People are just...
Yeah, and I would build on that. Yes, absolutely. Like I've never met a person that isn't psychic. I'll be totally frank. A lot of people have a lot of resistance to calling it that, or the framework of that identifier, and that's fine. Everybody gets to pick. We all get to pick our pronouns. We all get to pick how we are defined in the world, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But everyone's psychic. Like, what's interesting about our culture is that we validate psychic as long as we don't call it that.
Right. Yeah. The labels.
So I'll give two examples of that. One is clairvoyance. Everyone listening now has had the experience of reading a book and seeing the book in your mind's eye. And that is literally clairvoyance. It is no different than that. You're taking some outside input, which in the case of reading a book is symbols on a page that have no meaning except for the one we're assigning to them, by the way, through language. And then your mind and your spirit are processing that into mental image pictures, which is the same thing that I do when I sit down to close my eyes and read somebody's energy. I'm looking at symbols, I'm looking at pictures, and I'm sort of developing that in my mind's eye. It's the same musculature of clairvoyance. And then, I would also add to that, like mediumship. People think mediumship is like this weird, like crazy thing. The broader definition of mediumship is the one that I prescribe to, which is not only about communicating with spirit that have passed, but running energy from outside of you through you. That to me is a definition of mediumship.
Okay. Yeah.
And we do that all the time. You do that. You mentioned before we started recording, you were having a great weekend, and you were like maybe getting down to some tunes with some friends or something at a social gathering. When you're moved by music, you're running the music through you in a way, and it's animating your body. Some of the greatest and highest paid entertainers in our culture are truly capable mediums. That's really what they're doing. They're channeling something through them as a form of expression. So I find it very evocative that like our culture really celebrates psychic abilities. We're just not allowed to call it that for some reason.
Yeah, that's a fascinating distinction there. I think that says something about our culture, but also, we're on missions in our own respective ways to kind of shift that culture. Sure. And to bring, bridge the gap and perhaps bring some new perspectives on this. Okay, so let's talk about sensitivity as a superpower, or as I read on your website, not really a superpower, but the original power.
Right. Yeah. Going back to kind of what I was saying about how like we're all psychic, it's a very natural human ability. All these abilities are sort of baked in to our physiology and then also to our spiritual awareness. And what the practice to me really is, and it's no different than yoga or learning to be an actor or learning a musical instrument, is learning a form and a structure by which to develop the musculature of your consciousness or of your awareness or your attention. And I can use all those interchangeably in this instance. So in the same way that anybody can learn how to play a musical instrument, it doesn't mean you're going to play it well. It doesn't mean you're going to learn it in a month. For some of us, it takes a lot longer, but that doesn't mean you can't learn it, right? Or you can't train yourself to operate in a certain way. When I teach classes and work with groups, I talk a lot about how, to me, swimming is the best metaphor for psychic abilities.
Swimming. Okay.
Yeah. 80% of people, you can like throw them in the water and they'll like figure it out.
80%. Yeah.
80%. 20% are like deathly afraid of the water. And they're like, oh my God, no, like I won't get anywhere near it.
Yeah.
And then if you want to be an Olympic swimmer, if like you really want to make something of your ability to swim, whether that's through like giving professional readings or teaching or whatever, well, you have to train. You have to like find a coach. You have to have an outside perspective helping you be the best that you can be in that, and helping you with your form, which you can't always do while you're inside the experience. So I think when you start to look at sensitivities and psychic abilities in that way, it starts to make sense why for some of us it's innate. There's kids that pop out of the womb and they're like piano prodigies, right? I love that. It's like, wow, like how do they do that?
Yeah.
And then there's some people that it just takes us a lot longer to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I love this word that you've used a couple of times now, musculature. I love that because, it encodes so much just in a single word there. You're talking about training, you're talking about developing these things, and then also implying that there's already a system there for it that may be atrophied or built. If you're, you have to actively train muscle groups if you want to do, activities well, sports well, you actively train. I watched this golf documentary and I was watching them in the gym, training with weights, how like the swing and the compound muscles that would be used to hit the ball, so it's like musculature. It's all of the supporting elements that make these things available. So can you help us understand a little bit deeper than the surface? What are the components of musculature of psychic sensitivity?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. I can expand on it a little bit if you want me to make it clearer.
Tell me where you want to go with that.
Yeah. So like the compound muscles, right? So like, clairaudience, clairvoyance, but I have a feeling there's probably some other elements too, like that, the ability to still the mind or to focus.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
So let me take a step back and then come into that. So almost everyone that I've ever worked with has come to me because they feel either burdened or overwhelmed by the amount of sensitivity that they have. Okay. And almost everyone that I've ever heard of talking about being psychic, it's always from a perspective of being the effect of that awareness and of that energy. Does that make sense?
Being the effect.
Yeah. So people are like, oh, I'm an empath. I can't go into a room without absorbing everybody's energy. I used to make jokes a couple years ago. It was like very, en vogue to talk about being an empath, and like it was kind of in the cultural conversation in a certain way. And I remember looking at a lot of like websites, like tips for empaths and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you can't go to festivals if you're an empath. And it's like, well, that's sad. Like, what if you want to go to a festival and you're an empath, right? And so to me, that's approaching all of this stuff from an aspect of being a victim to it, or being solely focused on like what it's doing to you.
Got it. Yes. Very
real. Definitely needs to be addressed, and definitely is part of the equation. But just like you were sort of bringing up it being a musculature, that's only one half of it. That's like the bicep.
Yep.
Right. And most people, what I found, have an overdeveloped bicep. They have an overdeveloped receptivity to other people's energy. And so that's the experience of being psychic to that kind of person, is one of just overwhelmingly being receptive. Right.
Yes.
What I know to be true, and where I think, training and teaching and the kind of magic that I get off on watching other people go through this kind of experience, is the level at which you are sensitive to energy is commensurate with the level at which you are able to direct and change energy. It's the same muscle. In the same way that a bicep and a tricep kind of occupy the same space, but they're opposite, right?
Yeah.
So what the work that I try to do is all about is like taking people with an overdeveloped bicep and putting them through some exercises that will help them train their triceps, so that hopefully that inequity will balance out. It's not about taking away the receptivity. It's about balancing it with your own ability to direct and change energy, so that it starts to feel like a little more like you're treading water rather than drowning all the time.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So then the musculature. Yeah.
Yeah. So then to bring that, can you sorry, I got lost in the sauce.
Yeah. So the what are the skills that wind together to support a healthy integration of these abilities?
Got it. Okay. Well, the first thing you have to learn how to do is to bring your consciousness and your awareness, and I can use that interchangeably with your spirit, into your own body. And there's a million practices for this, right? Like any kind of embodiment practice, I think, is speaking to that same thing. And that's the foundation of it. In the classes that I teach, that's about grounding. And that's, again, like a term everybody knows, but it's slightly different definitions for different people in different modalities.
Yeah.
But I think a grounding practice is essential to all of it, because what you really want to do is kind of be present in the experience. And I say that all the time, and people nod like you're nodding, except it's like a lot harder than you think, and that
It is.
people think, right?
Yeah.
To be present, and I'm going to use sort of giving someone a reading as a great example of that. To sit and be present with another person is an incredibly intimate thing and an incredibly vulnerable thing, right? Even we've chatted before this and blah, 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 but like just sitting here talking about these things, as I'm talking, things are getting stimulated in you, whether it's curiosity, interest, excitement, but then also like fear and judgment and like, oh, I wouldn't say it that way, or I wouldn't do it that way, which is part of the natural way that humans interact. So to be really present with somebody is actually a learned skill. And it's something that actually can be one of the hardest parts of this work. So that's, to me, like very foundational. And then second is to start to learn about running energy, because what the energy that you choose to run through you has a dramatic effect, not only of your own experience of something, a place, a person, a conversation, a reading, etc., but also the other person's experience of you, right?
Yeah.
So we've all been in a conversation or, an experience in a relationship where somebody's running something that's like, I just don't like that, or like, yeah, that doesn't resonate with me, or I'm not into that. And then, that brings up a whole bunch of stuff inside of me. So that sort of autonomy of self and like what you're choosing to run and have inside of you has an effect not just on you, but also on everyone around you. So learning how to really neutralize what you're running through you in any given moment, and sort of find like a baseline or a ground zero, I think is also really important, and kind of, to me, stacks on top of grounding, right?
Yeah.
The last piece, and it's obviously infinitely more complicated than this. I'm kind of simplifying it down, but like the last thing I would sort of build on that is, I really look at this work from a perspective that there's only two kinds of energy in the universe, and people get very stimulated kind of when I talk about this because they want it to be more complicated. And I love complication as much as everybody, but like I think it really is as simple. There's two kinds of energy in the universe. There's your energy, and there's literally everything else.
Yes. Yeah, right? That makes sense. Yeah.
So in order to be in relationship to an energy outside of you, the first step is to really be in relationship to yourself in a way that is in movement and validates and acknowledges kind of all in who you are in that moment, and allows you to be really open and vulnerable. And sort of when you ask me, like, what are the tools there? Those are really the foundational tools of the practice.
Yeah. Awesome. I appreciate that expansion of the ideas there. That's really, really interesting. And it makes me think about how a lot of people, so in the Neville Goddard community, we talk a lot about using imagination to manifest outcomes.
Yeah.
So the idea of living in the end of something, or working with the subconscious mind to accept a new identity, which then manifests into circumstances, people, places, things, and events. And a lot of people tell me that the biggest thing that they struggle with when it comes to doing these practices is getting their mind quiet enough to actually be able to focus on holding the image of what they want in a way where it can imprint. The metaphor we use is, you're taking a long exposure photograph and you've got a tripod, right? But you have to keep,
I like that. Yeah.
Right? You have to keep the camera still,
yeah,
while the it's open, so that it actually makes an imprint on the film. And a lot of people struggle to do that. How do you relate to what I just said, William? I'm curious as to your take.
Yeah. So the meditation practice that I work with is very active. I'll take a step back and preface this answer a little bit with, like, I had a teacher who once said this, and I still go back to it because I think it's just so profound. There's 1,000 doors into the temple, right? So, like, in the end, it's all leading to the same thing. There's just so many different ways to get there, and I think that speaks to, like, different proclivities, different personality types. You know, there's people who are activators, people who aren't, et cetera, et cetera. But the practice that I work with is very active. It's not like a stillness emptying practice necessarily. It's more about, like we said earlier, like autonomy and focus and being able to direct your own attention. You know, obviously there's a certain amount of, like, sort of clearing out, but then it's really about, sort of like you said, holding that aperture open for long enough to really get a true sense of what it is that you're in the presence of, or what you're trying to put your attention on. And then from there, the thing that always gets in the way is resistance.
Yes.
Right? So a lot of the work that I do with beginning students is, rather than fighting it, what if you, like, gave it a big hug, right? So let's say you sit down to meditate and you're like, like, I can't stop thinking about work. I can't stop thinking about work. And it's like, well, stop trying to push it away.
Right.
What is it trying to tell you?
Yes.
What is not being, or what is trying to be communicated to you? It's like, oh, there's this thing I forgot to do, or there's this Slack message I forgot to send, or my boss is really mad at me for that. It's like, great, well, open up communication, tell your boss I'll be back with you in an hour, and then, like, move it out, right? So rather than fighting the noise, it's more about sort of being present and aware, and, like, get really detailed with the noise. And then you can start to figure out, like, great, now that I have my hands around it, now that I understand what this is, then you can start to change it. You can start to adjust and direct that energy in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very helpful. And there's layers to what you just said. We'll let the viewers sit with that. That's really good. Addressing the common myth that psychics can't thrive socially or professionally first of all, let's make sure we're putting this in the proper context. Is that still the common myth, or do you think we've evolved past that?
I still come across people all the time who, well, I will say there's, like, two camps of that to me. Okay. One is there's the camp of people that, like, oh my God, I love this stuff. I'm psychic. I'm sure you and I have I know I've gone through this, but I'm sure you've gone through this in your own way. And it's like, you know, finally, like, a language that speaks me, finally a group of people that get me, finally a framework that helps me feel empowered in my life. Yeah. And then what I went through personally, and what I've watched others go through, is kind of losing yourself to that, or kind of abdicating the rest of your life in the importance of that, which, like, you know, I know people who are interested in a lot of things that end up in that same conflict, right? So I think, like everything else, you know, it's all moderation. But I've watched people kind of get so into the spiritual stuff and the spiritual work that at the expense of other things in their life, whether that's relationships or profession or et cetera, it's incredibly, and I did it for 8 years and I'll never go back, hard to make your living as a professional psychic.
Yeah.
There's a lot to, we could probably do a whole episode just on that topic, but there's a lot in that, like making your survival dependent on your, you know, it's no different than being like, I want to be an artist, and then, like, trying to make your living as an artist. Like, a small percentage of the population is actually gifted enough and has command of the instrument enough to really be able to do that without it, like, wearing you down very, very, very fast. Yes. Not to mention the panic and the chaos of trying to figure out, like, where your next client's coming from and where this is got, you know, like, sometimes it's nice to just have a paycheck, right? And have other skills that will supplement your income in that way. So I see people kind of go head first into that. And I'm always now, from my old age and wisdom, the first to be like, you really don't want to do that. Like, trust me. So there's that. And then there's also the people who, you know, it's not easy to even have this conversation with, I mean, it's easy to have this conversation with you because we're kind of like mind, and we tend to, you know, just in our brief interactions, we like overlap on a lot of things. But like when I bring this up to people in other spaces, they like, you know, you get a lot of pushback. You get a lot of people look at you funny. People, you know, it's hard in a way to live in this structure in the world. So what I've been working on for myself, and what I hope I can impart on other people, is ways to integrate it into your life that allow you to be validated for having it, but don't necessarily maybe call it that, or it's not so outright or so at the forefront, without invalidating it or making it a secret or hidden, because no one likes to have parts of themselves shamed. Certain, right?
Yeah.
But maybe you don't have to make it your thing. Maybe it can just be a part of all the things that you do.
It doesn't have to be on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, like, you know, and certainly you see this, I mean, it was maybe about 10 years ago, everybody started using intuitive instead of psychic. And so now everybody's an intuitive reader rather than a psychic reader, because it's like a softer word with less charge, you know? And I'm sure there'll be another word in 10 years that everybody will start using, and like, you know, culture kind of shifts in that way. But yeah, I'm really passionate about like what the world needs is not more professional psychic readers. What the world needs is people who are energy aware, energy in tuned, able to be sensitive to and direct energy in spaces where that isn't normally acknowledged or validated.
I love what you just said. I think that's very important. And it also aligns with this bigger paradigm shift that's occurring in the world, which is this shift away from centralized power structures and centralized ways of doing things. And let me outsource, you know, my authority to a doctor or to a psychic, right? Or to a scientist, right? But let me actually empower myself to educate myself on my own health outcomes, educate myself on how to, you know, be sensitive, and not that there isn't value in getting expert opinions from others, but it's this whole idea of taking the power back and decentralizing. And I think I'm very passionate about this idea of sovereignty and the resilience that sovereignty and decentralization empowers. You know, in a changing world, you know, when everything is central and centrally focused and concentrated, it's a single point of failure. And I think that the more people learn to do things like this, the healthier our society becomes in general. And so I love that you pointed that out. And, you know, you said the world doesn't need more professional psychics. It needs more people who have learned to integrate their innate abilities and weave it in and kind of place it in its proper place of a whole identity, a whole personhood, a whole and complete presence.
Yes. Yeah, that was so well put.
Thank you.
That. Yeah, in a way. And like, you know, to just like reframe that in a different picture, it's like we don't need more medicine women living on the edge of town.
Yeah.
We need them back in the town center.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's also like this great sort of like this links back to where we started, which was that kind of an alienation, right? It's like we need the people that have felt alienated to start to feel more comfortable coming back into the conversation in a way that is not denying the conversation you're walking into, but the state of things that you're coming to bring your awareness and your focus to.
Oh, there's layers to that, what you just said there too. I feel like we're just dropping these little nuggets here that anyone can take and unpack that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really good. Okay. So as much as I'd love to dive into that, let's keep going.
Yeah. Okay.
Woo, all right. So let's talk about this idea of psychic integration in a professional world. So in addition to being the founder and leader of Art of the Seer, which is a psychic academy or clairvoyance academy, you're also a corporate VP, and you're you know, moving and shaking in the corporate world. And I believe you told me that industry is events, right? So like that's not
creative agency production agency stuff. Yeah, I mean it's high stress. It's high you know, high demand, high stress.
Yeah,
service. A lot of, I'm constantly in rooms with very unconscious people is what I would say, right? Like people who are just, trying to get it done, but not thinking about part of how I've sold myself professionally is like the way we work is as important as the work.
Yes.
Right. So when I run a team or I run a project in any of my corporate environments, I'm psychic all the time. I'm reading my colleagues. I'm, let me frame that. I'm reading them in a non-invasive way. I'm not like, I'm not like reading their personal lives. I'm more like, I'm like, oh, this person has trouble with, direct feedback or direct authority. Great. Yes. Well, when I'm working with this person, I'm not going to sit in a place of authority in my energy with them. I'm going to sit next to them in my energy. And that's a very different posture to have with someone. And then with this person, they're looking for a daddy. So like every time I work with them or interact with them, I got to go in and I got to lead hard and I got to lead, sort of out in front, and I got to make them feel supported and protected, right? Like I've got their back. So to me, what being psychic in that professional setting has really allowed me to do is, again, like a musculature, tailor moment to moment how I am showing up in my energy to certain situations and relationships and experiences, and be able to quickly pivot so that I can meet the moment and meet the need of the project and of the thing at the time, rather than being stuck in sort of one way of being.
Yeah.
And I have found that is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it's a huge asset.
And like people don't maybe know that it's happening, but whatever's happening, they tend to like that it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's like really validated. It's given me a really nice professional space to work in, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at this stage in your career, in your life, in your maturation of these abilities, do you find that your experience of being integrated in this way with clairvoyance, clairaudience, all of the clairs, like you and Claire are best friends.
Yeah.
Is it a stream of consciousness thing, or do you find yourself, pulling back from a meeting and like taking a pause and closing your eyes and doing your practices and then like being like, okay, what is actually going on here? You see the question? Yeah,
I do. And listen, the way you framed this makes me sound like I've got it all together. I'm a hot mess, like all the time. I don't want anyone listening.
It's kind of what I was looking for, to be honest.
I don't want anyone to think that I'm like, I have all the answers, or I had like, absolutely not. I'm a disaster 60% of the time. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just make it up most of the time. I think of it like, I don't know if you remember when I was a kid, there were these toys that were like inflatables with like sandbags at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think about it this way. My psychic abilities allow me to bounce back faster.
Yeah. Okay. Resilience.
Right? So I'm in a client meeting and it's rough. Clients are rough in a client service agency and situation, and can be demanding and can be mean. I mean, I've been yelled at by more clients than I care to admit. I feel like I can bounce back from that in a certain way. Like I can leave the meeting and put it aside, come back to that emotion later. I can clear it. I can work with my team to help clear that in a certain way. It's just, again, that I go back to the musculature. It's like, I feel like I have a really well-developed ability to shift energy.
Yes.
And that just comes in handy. It doesn't mean you don't handle energy.
Right. It's not that you don't handle the energy, it's that you handle it productively. There's it's like leaning in a way rather than leaning back. Like, oh no, I know what's going on here. And like you said, you can still be a hot mess in the moment, like at times, because things happen and people get triggered, it's a thing. But having the skill set to then know what to do with that. That's the real world application of these things. They talk about like the monk, who's living up on the mountainside, and people would go up and visit and they'd be like, oh my God, he's so wise. He's like, he's just so calm and collected and always connected to the oneness with everything. Right. And they're like, monk, you should come down and spend more time with us. And so he like moved into the village. And then he started getting triggered all the time. And he became angry and snapping at people. And they're like, oh, okay, he's not that enlightened after all. Right. So
that is archetype of Tarzan, right? It's like, you know, I just imagine Tarzan in the city, like, the cars, I don't know what to do, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and I think we're in a time in, you know, people talk about like human evolution, and I don't pretend to make grandiose statements or pretend like I have any idea what's happening here, because I don't. I just try to show up and be in it. But like, I think we're at a time in our culture, certainly, where, again, we don't need more people going to the mountaintop. We don't need more people. Like, it's one thing to go have a 5-day yoga retreat in Bali and like quiet, right? I'm at one with myself. I just spent 4 days disconnected, no phone. No, I mean, amazing. Like, who doesn't want that? But if then you come back into the city and within a second you're like, again.
Yeah.
Well, what's the point? You got to go spend another $8,000 to go on another retreat to get that back. Like, how do you have that in your life as something that you can call back to and return to, kind of on demand?
Yeah. And that speaks to the musculature. Yeah.
Right.
The developing it. Yeah. Okay. So there's one more thing in this segment here, psychic integration, professional world. So you were sharing before we started recording about how this is really kind of your leading passion right now is helping people who are out there in the trenches, so to speak, you know, in their careers, like rather than training professional psychics, like you want to help people who already have their profession or their career, their endeavor, integrate these additional abilities to become better at whatever it is that they're doing. And not just better. I don't want to frame this only as a superpower. Become more integrated, more whole, more present, more complete, right? So what is the way to do that? Like what is the recipe for that?
I think it comes from, there's like 3 parts of that. One is, you know, there's this thing about initiation, right? And I know you know this from your work. Like, you have to be initiated by somebody who's been initiated. You can't.
Yeah.
And this is where I tell people, like, I mean, you can go watch all the YouTube videos, right, about being clairvoyant or being a medium that you want. And that's great. Like, it's great to gather information and watch other people do it. But like, you have to be in direct relationship to someone who's at a different vibration than you in order to shift your own vibration. You can't just do it on your own.
Yes.
And so I think you have to find, you know, I joke sometimes with the members of the Academy, especially newbies who, you know, spiritual spaces, there's a lot of trauma around spiritual spaces.
Yes.
Especially right now, I think, as we're coming out of a certain phase of evolution into another.
Yes.
You know, for many, many years, I mean, you could probably almost say like 2,000 of them, we've been in a very control-based matrix for spirituality. You know, the sort of the old new religions coming back from about 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, and then into certainly the last 100 or 200 years in Western culture, have all been about control matrices, right? Like, and rules-based spirituality and spiritual practice.
Yes.
And I think that, you know, for whatever reason, we needed that, because that was the medicine of the time.
Exactly.
But I think certainly, and it might have something to do with the fact that we're all ADHD now, but you know, we're all demand avoidant now. Like, nobody wants any rules, right? So I think I joke with my members that, like, find a teacher that you like and trust them for just a little bit. Maybe not your whole life. You don't have to hand your authority and your autonomy over to them. You don't have to like give up any sense of self to them. But like, if you're gonna work with a guide or with a teacher, you have to give them your trust and like let them do the thing they do and let them do that for you.
Yes.
And that's oftentimes the hardest first step with people, because we have so much trauma about that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing. The second thing, I think you need community.
Yes.
So I think and this saddens me, because as a man of a certain age in a certain culture at a certain time, I deeply identify with the hero's journey. And I see my own life through that lens, and I resonate very deeply with some of the Joseph Campbell stuff and like all offshoots of that. I mean, Star Wars was the first movie I loved. Of course, I'm Luke Skywalker. Of course, I'm Superman, right? Like we're all Superman in some way. But I do think that culture is changing around that. And I think especially some of the Gen X or the Gen Y and Gen Z generations are not in a hero's journey. They're in a very different journey. And I think that's because those of us that came before were successful in ours. So we don't need that anymore. However, that's what we needed. But now they need something else. And I think that has a lot to do with community and a lot to do with feeling safe and protected and belonging and validation in a community setting. That's why I teach in Art of the Seer is set up as a community space rather than just one-on-one coaching. And then the third piece of that has to be a willingness to be weird or cringe, I guess you would say, right? Like, and I think, again, this is very popular with the Gen Zers, right? Like, they seem to be running toward cringe, not away from it. I was taught as a good Gen Xer, like we grew up in social constructs where it was like, don't be cringe. Like, don't let anyone see you be cringe, And I think the kids today are all trying to out cringe each other in a certain way. So in order to like really embrace that journey because ultimately it's the artist's journey, right? Jackson Pollock didn't create what he created by not being cringe, right? Like I'm just using him as an easy example, or Basquiat, right, would be another good one. It's like at the time his art was like freaking weird and like, like people kind of saw immediately there was something genius in it, but you have to be willing to go against grain. You have to be willing to go out on a limb, take risks, like do the thing that you're not supposed to do. And those three things together, I think, finding a guide and trusting, finding a community where you feel a sense of belonging, and then being willing to be cringe, I think are the three parts of that.
I love that. I was not expecting that as an answer, but now that you've given it, I want to do a whole podcast episode just about the transition from hero's journey to the artist's journey. I feel like that's gold right there. So we'll put a pin in that for our next conversation.
I love it.
Yeah, that was fascinating. I love the little bit of cultural commentary there, and I think we can all relate to the shifting themes. And like you said, it's evident that the next generations that are coming up are on a slightly different path. Like there's elements, but it's definitely different. And so I think recognizing that and being flexible and adaptable to meet them where they are is so important, because that's, it's like we each generation takes turns, being leaders for the next generation coming behind them. So, part of leadership is being like, hey, rather than trying to make you into what I've been, right? Let me meet you where you are. Yeah.
It took me 15 years to figure that out. I think where a lot of guides and teachers lose the plot is they have an amazing experience of something that is sort of given to them by a guide or a docent or a teacher or something. And then they go, it was so amazing. It so spoke to me. It changed me. Now I want to turn around and give that to someone else. But that's not actually what teaching is. Yeah. Right? What teaching to me is letting yourself have what you needed to become you, so that then you can turn around and be what someone else needs. And oftentimes that looks very different and not at all like what you needed. Right? Wow. But you needed that in order to be you, so that then you could be you to someone else, maybe in a totally different context or structure.
I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah. And frankly, it's moving also. It's moving. Yeah.
Yeah, I just see people all the time being like, well, my teacher taught me to do it this way, so I'm going to teach you to do it that way. And I just don't think that works. I don't think that's actually teaching. That's it's no different than like a difference or the delta between like Montessori education and like rote education.
Okay. Yes.
I'm getting a little out there here with this. But.
A little out there. I'm going to offer another analogy just to make sure we really land this. So one thing that I play a lot with is systems thinking and like tech lenses on things. So you could say, if you're just taking, oh, my teacher taught me to do it this way, so I'm going to teach you to do it the same way. You're just being a repeater, like a signal repeater. But really what the world needs are nodes. So nodes process the signal and then choose what to broadcast.
And I'm going to plus up what you're saying. What we're describing is the difference between being a channel for something else or being the creative.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
so now using your analogy, it's like you could be the channel for something, this happened to me. And so now it's happened. I'm giving it to you. Yep. That's being a channel. That's different than being affected and sort of healed by the thing that happened to you. And now all of a sudden I'm going to use that to create something unique and different of and from me.
Yeah, I like that. And I also like how it commands a maturity, because I think the lazy way to do it is just to say, oh, well, it worked so well for me, it must be meant for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think the mature way to do it is to say, oh, it was what I needed. Now that I'm, as you said, whole and healed, now I can be fully present and meet whoever's after me in where they are, and then be bespoke for them, like help them devise or create what's going to work best for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's authorship.
It is, and it's creative, and it's the art. It's the path of the artist. I always come back to that as my sort of point zero is like, I really think the goal of psychic development, and at least in the framework that I'm working, is the same as developing your unique voice as an artist. It's the same journey. It's the same path.
Yes. That's beautiful. Yeah. And we're moving into a paradigm where, art just keeps getting more important. Like not that it can get more important, but we're learning to value it in its proper place. Let's put it that way.
Well, we're all creators now in the creator economy, right? And I don't think that's wrong. I think there's something that's actually speaking to. Nobody today in our culture wants to be a coal miner or wants to be a business executive.
Also true, yes.
Right? Like nobody wants that anymore. Nobody wants to work hard and, I don't know, be like a managing director of an agency. Like nobody's like looking at that as what they really want. What we all want to be is creators. And we've developed technologies and tools that are enabling that. I mean, some of them are a little off the rails, and some of them maybe there's a lot of undesired effects coming from the speed at which we're getting there. But I think that's really speaking to human development in an interesting way, which is what does it look like when we all stop working and we all start creating?
I love that. Yeah, that's absolutely the way forward. Yeah, I think the upcoming generations, even the unborn generations, are asking us to become that.
And that's why I say I'm not here to train professional psychics.
Yes.
Right? It's like I just don't think that's the future. I think it's what is the unique way in which you're psychic? How do you tune into your abilities? How do you train that musculature so that you can bring forth into the world something that is uniquely you? And that it might be being psychic in some way. It might be working with people one-on-one in some psychic way. And that's great if that's true to who you are. That's different than being like, oh, that looks really cool. I had a great psychic reading once. I want to learn how to do that. And then I want to do that. I want to do that same thing to other people. That's like those two things are different.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to our next segment here. Let's talk about Neville Goddard and the field of imagination. So Neville Goddard was a 20th century mystic, author, speaker, seminal in the way that he introduced imagination as the creative power of reality. His very clear teachings around consciousness is the only reality. Everything that we perceive is a form of consciousness. The material world is consciousness hardened into form, as he would say it. And really kind of bringing to the Western world this very integrated Eastern philosophy. I mean, going back to Hindu cultures, I mean, this is ancient wisdom, but he really brought it to Western audiences in a way that really lit people up with awareness in a kind of in a fresh take, in a fresh way. And his core message is that imagination creates reality. And based on our earlier conversation, we were talking about, before we were recording, we were talking about how you see clairvoyance as imagination in action.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit about that and expand upon that?
Yeah, it's, when you read a book and you see it in your mind's eye, it's like, that is your clairvoyance. Like, it's no different. And I'm not very familiar with Neville, so I looked him up a little bit after our previous conversation, and I'm excited to dive in and learn more a little bit about his work. But I think what's really evocative about that is how much of what happens to us in our lives is simply because we've already created a psychic structure in which that's the only possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So if your imagination is creating your reality in real time, like what I would say is that your imagination is creating containers all the time.
Yes.
And that the energy that gets put in the container becomes your reality, and it becomes shaped like the container. Does that make sense?
It does. So Neville's frame for this is state of being, which is everything that a human being accepts and consents to as being true about himself, others, and the world.
Yeah, and notice that language of consents to, because I think that's so funny, because on surface it sounds like only if you agree with it, but you can certainly consent to things that you don't agree with, right?
Yeah.
And, without directing the conversation in this way, I would point to our current political climate in the country as this. I just keep saying, if we just stop paying attention, half of it would fall apart.
So interesting that you point that out, because I noticed that, again, we're going to make this a very short and shallow incursion into the topic, but I noticed that someone who's very prominent in terms of saying things started saying, "Thank you for your attention." And when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, now I know that it's time to tune this out, because I know that like literally the fourth wall is being broken, and it's saying, hey, you're keeping this alive by looking at it.
Yep. Yeah. Chris Hayes, who's a news commentator and anyway, he's someone people know. He wrote a book recently about attention in that way. And I just think there's a game going on around attention that a lot of people are really unconscious to. And I think it has more power than people know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well said. Okay. So
the commanding of attention is it's like a real thing.
Yes. Commanding of attention. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It has some weight when you say it that way, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. We talk about attention being the most valuable currency we have, far more valuable than your dollars or your euros or your Bitcoin.
Well, there's a reason a 30-second ad at the Super Bowl costs $1 billion, right? And finally putting that together, when you start to realize that on an individual level, your attention is actually that valuable.
Yes.
And you start to sort of reclaim that for yourself. And I'm going to link that all the way back to the very beginning, the first thing we talked about, which is I think when I was younger, I had no command of my attention, and I felt overwhelmed and pulled and kind of overridden by all the things demanding my attention and commanding it. And sort of taking back authorship of that and ownership of that, I think is the most profound part of this journey.
I love how you pointed out becoming aware of that at the personal level. Like, it's so easy to depersonalize. Oh, attention is the most valuable currency we have. No, it's my attention individually. So, to the viewers, the listeners, your attention individually, your personal faculty of attention is the most valuable currency you have. It is what is creating your life. We encode it into our language, what we pay attention to. What else do we pay? Money, right? But attention is even more valuable than any other form of currency.
Yeah, absolutely. I read a funny quote the other day. I forget who to attribute it to, but it was like on a meme or something. And it was the most valuable skill in life is learning how to be in a good mood even when there's nothing to be in a good mood about. Because what that's really saying is like if you can shift your attention away from the problem, you can actually have more authorship of like what your experience of the world is.
100%. Yes, that is the key skill of authorship, is learning to control and direct one's attention.
So I think like bringing that back again to Neville and kind of that imaginative field, it's really all about creating containers so that those containers can be filled with energy, and then that's what's, to me, creates your reality.
Yeah, I love the concept of the containers filling with energy. Yes. Yeah, so the principal manifestation technique taught by Neville is to in the liminal state between wake and sleep, which is of course that portal state. It's the door to the subconscious mind, the alpha theta brainwave cusp, that little window, hypnagogic state, to create your imaginal scene that implies that you are and that you have whatever it is that you desire to manifest for your life. Create that imaginal scene and you hold it steady. Remember the camera on the tripod, you hold it steady as your brainwave patterns move through that little portal state of consciousness. And so in my mind, another way to conceptualize that is that you're flowing the energy, the currency of your attention into the containers that on a psychic level represent what you desire to manifest into reality, into your life. And you're filling them with energy. And when you do that night after night, very quickly they become full enough of energy that they start to, the plastic substance of reality talks about how reality is a plastic substance.
Yeah.
So the plastic substance flows into the containers, our psychic containers that we set up. Right. Yeah. So over time, as you're doing this, you're flowing the energy, it starts to harden. And then, as Neville calls it, hardens into fact. Right. So that's a lens we haven't explored before. So I love that we're able to bring these worlds together here. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And I would just plus up that with the practice that I work in and that I teach, teaches you how to do that whenever you want, on demand. Mm-hmm. Like you don't have to be in that liminal sleep state in order to do it. You can actually create that for yourself. And then in addition to that, effortless manifestation, as in, what if you created the containers and let other people fill them with what you want?
Oh yeah, with the energy? Yeah.
Right. So what if you became responsible for the containers and not for filling them, and let that happen kind of on its own?
Yeah. Though that's a whole nother level. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's collegiate. Yeah.
That is Olympian swimmer level. You don't just get pushed in the pool and do that, for sure.
It is, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so should we do some exercises and maybe a little demo?
That. I love this idea. Yeah, great. Okay, cool. Close your eyes.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. Take a couple of nice deep breaths and just kind of settle into your body. And then would you just sort of flip on or turn on that creative and imaginative part of you? And I like to think of that part of me like kind of right behind my eyes, kind of in the center of my head. Great. And then would you just imagine for yourself a line of energy that connects your first chakra, which is just located at the base of your spine. Just connect that all the way down to the very center of the earth. So just imagine a line of energy connecting your first chakra through the chair, through the floor, through the building, through the rocks and dirt and crust of the earth, kind of all the way down until that line of energy kind of anchors and plugs into the center of the earth. And at the center of the earth, I like to imagine like a spinning ball of hot molten iron, but you can imagine it any way you want. And then would you feel that sense of sort of being tethered to the center of the earth or anchored? Now take another deep breath or two. One of the things, if you've ever been out on the open sea on a boat, you know, is that an anchor is not meant to keep you in one place. It's meant to keep you from drifting away. So would you sort of imagine that line of energy as an anchor, not meant to keep you still or static or stuck or frozen, but instead just keep you in movement, but not drifting away? Great. And then just take a nice deep breath or two again, settle into your body, and have that sense of sort of being the hand in the glove, right? Like kind of just tuning out everything else around you and just being very focused on kind of the interior of your space, of your body. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to bring just a little bit of that attention, a little bit of that energy from the center of your head. I want you to bring it all the way down into your left big toe. And a lot of different spiritual practices and meditative practices kind of do, you do like a body scan, or you kind of like bring your awareness to different parts. But I want you to bring that attention actually into your left big toe until you're sort of inside your left big toe. And what's the energy like in there? What do you notice?
Thick.
Okay. If it was a color, what color would it be?
Brown.
Great. If it was a song, what song would it be?
Something classical, like a Mozart.
Okay, cool. Great. Now, would you take that little point of attention and sort of withdraw from the left big toe, just kind of pull yourself out? And would you put yourself in your left heel? And what's the energy like there?
It feels liquid.
Interesting. What kind of liquid?
Like a river, like a body of water, like a river, moving river.
Okay. If it was a color, what color would it be?
Silvery gray.
And if it was like a movie or a TV show, what does it remind you of?
Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah, that's like I saw his face instantly. Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of his science shows. The name's not coming, but I saw his face.
Yeah, that's great. You did exactly it. Now, what I'm pointing out here is that like you're reading yourself. You're reading the energy in those spaces and those points of references you have of the way your imagination interprets that energy. You're not making it up. That is reading it. Reading it is making it up, right? Cool. So bring your attention back up to the sort of center of your head behind your eyes and take another nice deep breath and kind of relax in your chair. Check in with that anchor, that grounding you have into the center of the earth, and just kind of reset yourself a little bit. And then you had mentioned to me in our previous conversation that you have a partner or somebody that you're in relationship to. Would you, out in front of you, create a bubble, just a clear bubble? And would you put a little bit of that person's energy into that bubble? And do the same thing. What color is it?
It's green.
Cool. What kind of green?
Like the spring green, right when it's first coming out, and it's like super green. It's hyper green.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if that green was an emotion, what would that emotion be?
It feels happy. And there's some joy in there too. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Great. And then maybe just sort of open up a little communication with that green. What does the green want?
Water.
A little dehydrated? Maybe a little like or something? Yeah, right. Like it's like, oh, give me some water. Great. And what does that green have anything to say to you?
I sense gratitude and appreciation.
Cool. Okay. Now just take that all and sort of drop it like an anvil down your grounding into the center of the earth. And then find that place in the center of your head. We're going to just do one more thing here. Would you create another empty bubble out in front of you? And I want you to invite into that bubble a little bit of energy of, I don't know, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. I have no idea why, but that's who's here. And would you look at their energy together kind of in that bubble? And what I always start with colors. So what color do you see?
I see orange.
Great. And what is that? What is the emotion of that orange, or what does it feel like?
Friction.
And does that remind you of anything, like a book or a movie or a TV show or a song?
Like shifting gears without the clutch pushed all the way in and getting a little bit of grinding.
Cool. And what does that color want?
To be seen and heard.
Cool. And why don't you almost like, when you like look behind the clothes in the closet, like pushing the clothes to the side, sort of looking behind it, would you look behind that orange for a mental image picture of what would it look like for them to have that?
I saw like a beach scene at a tropical resort.
And what does that mean to you?
They want space together apart from the world to focus on each other.
Awesome. Well, I hope Meghan and Harry enjoy their free clairvoyant reading that you just gave them. So take that bubble with all their energy. Yeah. So take that bubble with all their energy and just drop it down into the earth. You always want to clear out and clean out after saying that. Otherwise, you'd be carrying Meghan Markle around with you all day, which does not sound fun. Bless her heart. And then would you take a nice, long, slow, deep breath? And would you have a sense of kind of coming back to yourself and finding your center? And just letting go or releasing everything that's not you. And a lot of that got stirred up in the act of saying hello to those different energies. Okay, when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and come on out.
All right. Well, that was fun.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Or what's your experience to that?
Surprisingly easy, and the lack of pageantry around it, right? Like it's like, oh, let me just have you breathe.
Click, click,
right?
click. Yeah,
right? And then just like hop right in, as opposed to like I didn't have to light any incense, William. I had my lighter ready and everything.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like you can go to a business meeting or meet up with I do this with coffee shops every morning. I have like 6 different coffee shops in my orbit, and every morning I'm like, what's the energy today? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. This one's at a red. That looks fun. Like, I don't know. And then that's how I choose. So being psychic and reading energy can be very practical and pragmatic and really start to influence the way you live your life.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I appreciate the demo there and the demonstration of the immediacy of this as a skill. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. So we have just a few more things I think to talk about here, and then we'll wrap up. So
great.
I think the next thing I feel like we've had a wide ranging conversation so far, and it's been very nutritious. I think it's been a nutritious conversation. Yeah, let's talk about human imagination and AI and technological expansion. So this is something you and I had talked about the first time that we spoke before recording. Talked about this idea of how our humans' ability to imagine is one of the, imagination, but we're also talking about how really that's the same thing as clairvoyance, clairaudience, like these other, abilities that can become integrated. We can kind of like lump all these things together. Our abilities to interact with things other than what is observable with the 5 senses.
Yep.
That ability and to perceive the unseen is part of what makes a human being a human being. And at least as far as I'm aware of, as of the date of this conversation, technological intelligences such as what we're generally calling AI does not have the ability to perceive the unseen, we'll say, in the same way. So we're moving into this, this age of automation. I think you could call it an age of automation. What does progress look like? I'm going to ask you to wax poetic a little bit here. What does progress look like? If you could speak about an ideal world, maybe a decade out as we move through some of these evolutionary pressures, uh, if humans really took you up on this invitation to integrate this part of themselves, like what might that world look like in 10 years?
This is so rich, and like we've said so many times in this call, like we could talk about this probably for an hour back and forth, because I'm very curious your impression of this as well. Like, I love talking about this. I'm not a futurist by any stretch of the imagination, but what I do know is that, like we said in one of the earlier segments, no one dreams of labor.
Correct.
Anymore, right? Yeah. So in our culture, we went through a period. I mean, people's last names used to be your profession, right? Like John Shoemaker, right? Yes. I have an interesting perspective on that, which is I think you can go back and track human evolution using the chakras as a template. So there was a time on the planet when human experience was very first chakra experience, right? It was all survival. Safety and survival. And then there was a time when it was all second chakra, which was relational and emotional. And then kind of maybe the last 200 years, like around the Industrial Revolution, we kind of moved, and you can see that in culture, right? Like we went from the romantic composers, Beethoven and Stravinsky and all that, like into this kind of very third chakra expression of culture, which is very, the third chakra is all about effort and control and responsibility and energy distribution and like all these things. And I think we entered into this kind of third chakra space as a culture, and our world reflects that back to us, right? So it was all about labor and work and creativity at a third chakra level. Like we had to do. On some level, you could say the third chakra is really is like the doing chakra, right?
Yeah.
What's happened is, and of course, humanity we're not clean about anything. So it's like, there's always your outliers out in the front, there's the people in the thing, and then there's the people sort of picking up the rear. So what's happened is I think we're at a tipping point where more and more people are incarnating into a lifetime to have a fourth chakra experience rather than a third chakra experience of the world. And the fourth chakra does not include labor. It's not a doing chakra. It's a being chakra. Right? Your fourth chakra has everything to do with identity and affinity, love of yourself, love of others. And I think you see this in not only in our culture, how those at the forefront are really pushing identity as the defining thing of a lifetime, but the blowback against that by the people that are still in a third chakra or third dimensional reality, right? I think you can also correlate these to dimensions.
Makes sense, yeah.
We'll get that'll lead us down an even deeper rabbit hole. Yeah. But so as we're moving into that fourth chakra experience, which is all about identity and affinity and kind of creating on a being level rather than a doing level, what you're seeing is that tension between the old world and the new world. And I think what's, to me, is fascinating about AI, and I started out in deep resistance to AI a year ago. I've had a lot of experiences in my professional life of starting to incorporate it into my own work streams and stuff. And I actually have grown to love it, in part because I use it as a tool. And I think I'm individually particularly attuned to that because I've been learning and teaching tools for 20 years. So like, it's just like introducing a new tool into the toolkit. So I feel like I have a pretty good relationship to it. But what I see AI really doing is taking over all the work from the third chakra so that we can all create and be, which from the previous segment was all about we're all creators now. No one wants to write a marketing plan anymore. So can we let AI write the plan and then we fill it? Can we let AI create the container and then we're filling it with our own creativity and our own energy? And once we get over the fear of giving up the third chakra of that, which is hard because so many of us have lived in that for many lifetimes, and our families have, and our cultures have, and our religions are all third chakra based religions, control. Once we give up the fear and get around that, I think the possibility of what that's going to afford us could be really cool. It could also, I don't know, I've seen Terminator, it could like blow up the planet, maybe. I don't know. Who knows? But I tend to put my attention on what I think could be really exciting about that, which is creating more space to be creative and to own that.
Yeah, I love that. You definitely you got right into the heart of it. And I love that perspective. I think that's a very unifying, comprehensive perspective on this, tying in the experience of our ancestors moving through the chakras and then, graduating out of doing into being. And then I also like how, it teases what might come later, moving into the fifth and to the sixth, and then eventually into the crown. So I think that's really beautiful way to talk about this. What's next for us on the horizon with AI and the expansion of technology?
I think a personal understanding of where you are on that journey is really important to any sensitive, because some of us are like over that, right? So yeah. I consider myself really working in the fifth chakra in this lifetime, and it's all about communication for me, yes. Which is why a lot of my interests, my passions, my focuses are all communications based.
Yeah.
And so even when people talk about identity and being and my process of coming out as gay and like all these like different identity level things, I'm always like, yeah, what's the big deal? I don't like, why is that a big deal for you guys? Like, why, like, who cares? Like yeah. I had somebody, at work like a year or two ago asked me like, what's your preferred pronouns? I'm like, I literally don't care. Like, you can just call me whatever you want. I'm not offended.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that because I think everybody should not care, but right. I'm very clear with myself on like where I'm working and what's important to me, and that's not it. So I think if you develop a self-awareness of like where you are in your growth, it can actually help mitigate where to put your attention.
Beautifully said. Yes. I've already got a couple ideas for a round 2 on this podcast, William. I think we've got some more to explore, but for now, what are some upcoming programs? Obviously, in the description below, we'll put your links, but what are some upcoming programs, and what are you excited to bring?
The thing I'm most excited about for people to find out about is that every week at Art of the Seer, we have what's called practicums, which are held, curated spaces for members of our different trainings and classes, and people who are working their musculature in a variety of different ways to come in and practice the tools that they're learning. And these are open and free for anybody. Cool. So the cool part about it is anybody can come in and get a free reading, get a free healing, get a free astral body tune-up, get a free this, get a free that. Like they're this really rich playground space that are held and overseen by our faculty. And those are people that are just, they're not there to control or to own or to like make you have an experience. They're there to hold the space and have some guide rails so that it's validating for everybody. But we offer that 3 or 4 times a week. So nice. We always have new classes and new stuff to do, but I think it's the best kept secret on the internet is you can like drop in 3 or 4 times a week and get a free reading or healing from one of our members. And like, that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, for sure. And it's helping the person practicing the reading. And then it's also, you're getting something out of it and probably even learning a little bit about your skill set just through interacting with the community.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So again, links in the video description below. You can find William. He's available for calls. Do you do one-on-one still, William?
I do one-on-one coaching packages. I do private readings and healings. And I actually have on my website, you can just sign up for 20 minutes to chat with me. So nice. If you're listening to this show and you're like, I want to know more about that, or I want to ask William what he thinks about this, like book a 20-minute chat. I'm happy to jump on and talk to anybody anytime.
Awesome. Okay. Very cool. Yes. All right.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been like really, really fun.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I love that we were able to have this conversation, and it just felt so timely for some things going on for me and like what I'm present to. And, you just popped in my inbox at just the right time. And I was like, yes, this guy, we need to talk. So I'm just so grateful of how it came together. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to leave with the viewers with?
Well, I would love for you to come back and leave a comment on this once you post it, once you check in with your partner and find out if they really are having a joyful, happy day today at Green.
I need water.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. No, but this has been such a gift to be here and talk to you. And thanks everybody who's listening. I think your attention is really valuable and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you everybody for tuning into this. Thank you, William, for being here and for sharing some of your wisdom with us today. It's been a rich experience. I know I've grown from it, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners have too. All right. So that's all for now. Imagine wisely, my friends, and we'll be back with another one soon.